This is the gospel with Simply Chidi, and today I just want to talk about upholding our faith in these times. We are in a period of world trial, a period of world tribulation. A lot of people definitely are falling out of faith. And how important is it for us to stay in faith, to stay in God in these times? Think about it. We have a lot of tragedies around the world. People are dying, the coronavirus. And this has sparked out a lot of unbelief, and a lot of unbelief reflects in our comments. Yes, before I even go into a little bit of the scripture, there are so many references of people in the Bible who have stood firm in faith, and for their firmness in faith, God showed himself faithful towards them because they showed themselves faithful towards God. An example is Joseph in the Bible, who through betrayal from his brethren, and talking about Daniel, who through the lions den. These were people who stood for faith. Joseph had to go through prison, had to go through slavery. Daniel was started off from slavery, but God exalted himself in the lives of these two men. These people really showed themselves to be faithful. A lot of times the trend we have in this time is we have a trend of the Christianity where we want to talk about it as being religious. First of all, I like to make it very, very clear that yes, God is not about Christianity. First of all, in Acts chapter 11 verse 26, the disciples of Jesus were first called Christians. It was a derogatory remark to label a people who followed out after Christ. They talk like Christ, they preach the gospel. Basically, yes, the Christianity, yes, it's noble to say Christians, but God's love is for all humans, it's for every one of us. So it goes beyond the terminology we use as humans to describe a particular people. Today we are actually talking about humanity. And why I have to bring the illustration with the Christianity is because a lot of people still cast a lot of aspersion on the church, especially when it comes to the issue of the coronavirus. And people will try to make a lot of jokes and say, oh, where are the pastors? Why don't they come and bring about the healing? What the power they've claimed to profess? First of all, we should get it clear that power belongs to no man. Power belongs to God alone, and God chooses what he does at every single time. God sees the trend of everything that goes around the world, and he decides on what he wants to do alone. So first of all, when we want to attack a certain people, attack certain churches, I like a reference because we see the failings of the churches, we like to speak about them, and the problem is not about seeing the failings of the churches. The problem is about the way we go about it. If we see certain failings and there's a way we present it before the people and try to make them get closer to the word and know the word for themselves, it would have been fair, it would have been good. But that is not the case. We blatantly castigate the church and put people away from total belief in the gospel. God is a God for all humanity. It's not just about the church. I like a certain situation in the Bible where there was a certain kind of plague, where there were fiery serpents biting the children of Israel. First of all, that we're talking about the book of Numbers, talking about Numbers chapter 21 verse 7. The complaint that Moses brought them out of Egypt, they don't have the kind of food they want. They complain about God bitterly, and yes, fiery snakes where serpents were sent and were biting them. There was a plague of snakes. But think about it, what was their offense? Their offense was basically because they spoke about God. They spoke about God in a negative way. They spoke about the prophet of God. Moses on his own had no power to bring deliverance to the people. It was a mandate, a grace bestowed upon him at God at every given time God wanted for certain things to happen. I like what we have in Numbers chapter 21 verse 7. The people actually had to come to their senses. It says the people came saying, we have sinned and spoken against the Lord and against who was talking about the prophet Moses, said, pray unto the Lord that he may take away the serpent from us. I don't think it's so right for us to focus our attention on pastors, the church, individuals, even in nations. Certain nations are attacking certain nations over the issue we have at hand. I think this is the time where every man should draw closer to God and show our faithfulness. Moses had to pray to God on behalf of the people. God had to give Moses an instruction, make a fiery serpent, a brazen fiery serpent, and Moses had to do it out of brass. And yes, that plague was taken away. It was at God's own time, it was at God's own power, it was at God's own discretion, it was at God's own mercy. So when we get off focus and yes, instead of us drawing closer to God, we go totally away from God. Yes, it's a little bit disheartening. I don't know what the mind of God is towards this, but I tell you, it's not pleasant, especially when we have to speak against God. You might say we want to speak against the pastors. Think about it. A lot of times when we speak against the pastors, we have not taken away the beam in our eyes. Yes, because sometimes we all fall short and guilty in certain ways, have different kind of sins. We have our own personal sins. We've not walked the word in our life, but yet we are just looking for those flaws and we are not making efforts to make ourselves great before God. Matthew chapter 7 verse 5 says we should take off the beam in our eyes before we take off the beam in the eyes of other people. I like 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 17. It said judgment will start in the house of God. So why do we bother ourselves talking about the failings of other preachers, teachers, churches, when we know that their judgment comes from God? If they choose to fail, fine. It's not in our place to start putting words that will take people away from God. In the parable of the weeds, in the parable of the weeds and the tares, the wheat and the tares, God did not destroy the wheat and the tares. Tares talking about like the weeds in the midst of the plants you've grown. God did not destroy all of them together. God said, let them grow together, and in the day of judgment, everyone will be separated. Because in the midst of trying to take away the wheat from the tares, a lot of the tares from the wheat, a lot of the wheat might get uprooted. So what we find out in this time is the way we go about it, even we find ourselves guilty of taking people away from faith entirely. And this is something we should watch out for. Like, I even want to make a reference to the book of Revelations, talking about the 7 churches in the book of Revelation. There were actually 7 churches there, and there were actually 2 that were very, very close to being perfect. I'm talking about the 2 that were being close to being perfect. We're talking about the church in Smyrna and the church in Philadelphia. You had a church in Ephesus. They were a church, yes, they had their good parts to them, the good works and a lot of things. Well, at the time, they forgot their first love. Talking about the church in Pergamum, yes, they were accused of the doctrine of Balaam. They eat the food of the sacrifice to idols. There was fornication. There was something wrong. Talking about the church in Thyatira, they were led by a prophetess that was likened to Jezebel that will lure people into fornication. Talking about the church in Sardis, this was a church that they had a name that had lived, but they didn't know they were dead. They were just like an empty drum. The church in Laodicea, so they were neither hot or neither cold, and God said, I'm going to spew you out of my mouth. But talking about the church in Philadelphia, I say you have little strength, but you have not denied my name. You have little strength, but you have not denied my name. Hold fast to that which you've got. Say, I'm the one who opened the door, and no man can shut it. Talk about the church of Smyrna. They had gone through tribulation, they have gone through poverty, but yet they were ones who, yes, still held on. God had to tell them, be ye faithful unto death. Hold on fast to that crown. Think about it. This is a moment where we all should hold on strongly to the faith and believe in God. Because with the way everything is going, we'll find out that, yes, even what legacy are we going to leave for our children? God is not a God for a particular set of people. Christianity is not a white man's religion, neither is a black man's religion. As a matter of fact, God never sees any man as white or as black. We are all made in the image and likeness of God. So when you say, oh, it's a white man's religion, it's because you have not looked to the world and see how noble it is, how it balances the values, the virtues, the power in all of humanity, in all of existence. Think about it. If Joseph could come true and come to a point of glory because of his faithfulness, his steadfastness in God, and come to a point of glory. Yes, there was a pestilence, there was a famine that hit most part of the world at that time, that the children of Israel had to come all the way to Egypt. But God had already set a deliverer, who was Joseph. Think about Daniel. Daniel was one who will not defile himself with the king's meal because he didn't want to get too comfortable. He had to pass through diverse steps that showed his faith for God, to show how he will be faithful. Sometimes we think, oh, I am living my life on the low. I don't have enough. Things are not working fine for me. You think, oh, it's difficult serving God when you have nothing. I tell you, it could be far worse when you have much, because you feel like I have everything I need for my life. You could even forget God's worth. So it's an attitude, it's a decision, it's a mindset. It's diligently holding on to God. Like I will always say, this situation might be taking a whole lot of people down, but there will be people who will rise up even in this situation. You have to decide to make yourself to be one who will be counted amongst the numbers that will rise through. It is God who gives the power to be in health. He said he sends his words and he heals the land. I don't know if we want to make mockery of all the pastors, but even if you don't want to go to a pastor, you could be in that place where you intercede for the world, not always being one who you want to make out criticisms. I tell you, sometimes the critics, is good sometimes to have critics, but sometimes I like the people who are pace setters, who do not look at just what the critics are saying, are people who look at a way to make things happen better, look at the way to get into knowledge of God, the power of God. We have to come out strong in this generation. Don't make a fool of yourself. Don't be like the people spoken about in Colossians chapter 2 verse 8, who will follow after vain philosophy, after the traditions, after the rudiments of the world. God loves us all. We need to keep our faith. I tell you once again, a lot of people will rise up through this situation. Are you going to be one of those? I'm a testimony of a life that I know that, yes, God has saved me through a lot of situations. And I know, yes, it's because I have decided to stay with God. I would have probably have been on my own. I know God is true and God is real. You need to experience God for yourself. Stay blessed and do have a wonderful day. Thank you.